The scent of betrayal has a particular taste, bitter almonds mixed with iron and ash. King Alaric Thorne knew it well. He'd smelled it on battlefields, in council chambers, and in the silk-sheeted bed he'd once shared with a queen who wore lies like perfume. But tonight, standing before the carved obsidian doors of his private study, the scent was different, sharper, laced with something ancient and wild that made his wolf stir beneath his skin like a caged beast recognizing its mirror. His hand hesitated on the silver handle, silver because even kings needed reminders of their vulnerabilities, and for the first time in 3 centuries, Alaric Thorne felt the cold finger of fate trace his spine. Behind this door waited either his destruction or his salvation. He pushed it open. The woman who stood in the moonlight streaming through his windows was not supposed to exist. She was a ghost, a shadow, a secret his ex-wife had buried so deep that even the moon goddess herself seemed to have forgotten. But here she stood, Lyanna Ashford, the sister no one spoke of, the name that had been erased from every royal record, every family tree, every whispered conversation in the halls of the lunar court, and in her arms, wrapped in a blanket that shimmered with protective runes older than his kingdom, was a child whose eyes glowed with the unmistakable gold of Thorne bloodline, a child who should not exist. Lyanna's voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. "Your Majesty, we need to talk about what your wife did, and what she's planning to finish." The lunar court existed between worlds, not quite mortal realm, not quite the ethereal plane where the moon goddess walked among stars. It was a place of impossible architecture, where towers of white stone spiraled toward skies that shifted from twilight to dawn without ever touching true darkness, where silver veins ran through marble floors like frozen rivers, pulsing with ancient magic that hummed beneath the feet of those powerful enough to feel it. Alaric Thorne had ruled this realm for 347 years. He'd inherited a fractured kingdom of warring packs and forged it into an empire where wolf, witch, and hybrid walked the same streets without bloodshed. He'd done it through strength, through cunning, through the kind of ruthless pragmatism that made allies of enemies and examples of traitors. He'd also done it alone. The thought struck him as he stood in his private chambers, adjusting the ceremonial silver chains that marked his rank. Alone, despite the queen who'd shared his throne for 50 years. Alone, despite the court that filled his halls with laughter and intrigue. Alone, because loneliness wasn't about the absence of people. It was about the absence of truth. "Your Majesty, the council awaits." The voice belonged to Marcus, his beta and oldest friend, a wolf whose loyalty had been forged in the same wars that had shaped Alaric's crown. Marcus stood in the doorway, his weathered face carefully neutral, but Alaric caught the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes flickered toward the window where dawn was finally breaking. "Let them wait." Alaric's voice carried the weight of absolute authority, but also something else, a weariness that 3 centuries of rule had earned him. "Tell me, old friend, do you believe in fate?" Marcus hesitated. In the hierarchy of the lunar court, hesitation before your king was dangerous. But they'd bled together, fought together, buried friends together. That bought honesty. "I believe in choices, my lord. Fate is just the story we tell ourselves about the consequences." Alaric smiled, sharp and humorless. "Then I've made very poor choices." He thought of Seraphina, Queen Seraphina Ashford Thorne, whose beauty was legendary, whose political acumen had helped him navigate the treacherous waters of interpack politics, whose smile had never quite reached her eyes. Their marriage had been strategic, a union between the Thorne bloodline and the powerful Ashford witch clan. It had brought stability, it had brought prosperity, it had brought nothing resembling love. "The divorce will be finalized tonight," Marcus said quietly. "The council has approved the dissolution. Queen Seraphina will retain her titles and lands, as agreed." "As agreed," Alaric echoed. 50 years of marriage ended with signatures and seals. No children. Seraphina had claimed the ancient magic in her bloodline made conception difficult, and he'd believed her. No heirs to carry forward the Thorne legacy, just an empty throne beside his own, and the growing whispers that perhaps the Alpha King's line would end with him. The thought should have bothered him more than it did. He moved to the window, looking out over the court below. The city sprawled in concentric circles around the palace, each ring representing a different supernatural faction. The inner ring housed the pure-blood wolves, their mansions built of moon-touched stone that glowed silver in darkness. The second ring belonged to the witches, their towers wrapped in ivy that bloomed with flowers that only opened under starlight. The third ring was for the hybrids, those born of mixed blood, powerful but forever caught between worlds, never quite belonging to either. And beyond the walls, in the forests that surrounded the court like a protective embrace, lived the rogues, the outcasts, the ones who'd rejected pack law or been rejected by it. Alaric had been born in those forests, a fact his courtiers conveniently forgot. "There's something else," Marcus said, and now his voice carried a note of concern that made Alaric's wolf prick its ears. "The Queen's chambers were searched this morning. As per protocol for the dissolution, we found irregularities." "Irregularities?" Alaric turned from the window, his full attention now on his beta. "Explain." "Documents, correspondence with the Shadow Coven, and a name that appears repeatedly." Marcus pulled a folded parchment from his jacket, the paper yellowed with age and sealed with wax that had been broken. "Lyanna Ashford." The name meant nothing to Alaric. "Should it?" "Seraphina's sister," Marcus continued, watching his king's face carefully. "Younger by 2 years. According to these letters, she was declared dead 23 years ago. But the circumstances—" He trailed off, offering the parchment. Alaric took it, his fingers brushing the old paper with a gentleness that belied his warrior's hands. The letter was written in Seraphina's elegant script, but the words were anything but elegant. "The girl knows too much." The binding ritual failed. She retained her memories of the ceremony. "Mother suggests the traditional solution, but I have a better idea. The veil between can hold her. No one returns from the veil, and if she does, well, we'll ensure she has nothing to return to." Ice flooded Alaric's veins. The veil between was a place of legend, a dimensional prison where the lunar court sent its worst criminals, traitors, kinslayers, those who'd violated the most sacred laws. It was a place of eternal twilight, where time moved differently, where magic ate at your sanity until you forgot your own name. It was not a place for a young woman whose only crime appeared to be knowing too much. "When was this written?" His voice was deadly calm. 23 years ago. 3 months before you married Queen Seraphina. 23 years. Alaric's mind raced, calculating, remembering. 23 years ago he'd been consolidating power, negotiating the treaty that would unite the fractured pacts under his rule. The marriage to Seraphina had been the final piece, the alliance that would bring the powerful Ashford witches into his fold. Had he married a woman who'd condemned her own sister to a fate worse than death? "Find out everything about Lyanna Ashford," he commanded. "I want to know who she was, what she knew, and why Seraphina wanted her erased from existence." "My lord, the council can wait." Alaric's eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. "This takes precedence." Marcus bowed and left, leaving Alaric alone with the letter and a growing sense that his carefully ordered world was about to shatter. He didn't know how right he was. The day passed in a blur of political theatre. The council meeting where the divorce was formalized, Seraphina's face a mask of dignified sorrow that fooled everyone except Alaric, who'd learned to read the triumph in the set of her shoulders. The ceremonial removal of her belongings from the royal wing, each item catalogued and transported to her new estate on the edge of the court. The formal announcement to the realm that the Alpha King was once again unmated. Through it all, Alaric's mind kept returning to the letter, to the name Lyanna Ashford, to the question that burned brighter with each passing hour. What had she known? Night fell over the lunar court like a curtain of stars. Alaric dismissed his attendants early, claiming exhaustion, a lie, but a believable one. He stood in his study, the room lined with books that chronicled 3 centuries of his rule, and waited. He didn't know what he was waiting for, only that something was coming. The scent hit him first. Wild roses and rain-soaked earth, undercut with something sharper. Old magic, the kind that predated the lunar court, that remembered when wolves ran free and witches danced with demons under blood moons. It was a scent that didn't belong in his carefully warded study, where protective spells layered upon protective spells should have made unauthorized entry impossible. Alaric's hand went to the silver dagger at his belt as he turned toward the obsidian doors. They opened, and his world ended. The woman who stepped through was beautiful in the way wild things are beautiful, untamed, dangerous, real. Dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, threaded with silver that caught the moonlight. Her eyes were the deep green of forest shadows, and they held an age that her young face shouldn't possess. She wore simple clothes, leather pants, a dark tunic, but moved with the grace of someone who'd learned to fight, to survive, to endure. In her arms, she carried a child. The child couldn't have been more than 2 years old, with dark curls and skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. But it was the eyes that stopped Alaric's heart. Gold eyes. Thorne gold, the unmistakable mark of his bloodline, a color that appeared in only one family in all the supernatural world. "Your Majesty." The woman's voice was low, musical, and carried an edge of barely controlled fury. "My name is Lyanna Ashford, and we need to talk about what your wife did, and what she's planning to finish." The child in Lyanna's arms stirred, making a soft sound that pierced through Alaric's shock like a blade through armor. Those gold eyes, his eyes, blinked up at him with the innocent curiosity of the very young, and something ancient and primal roared to life in his chest. His wolf recognized what his mind was still struggling to accept. "That's impossible." The words came out rougher than he intended, his voice dropping into the growl that made lesser wolves bare their throats. "I have no children. I would know." "Would you?" Lyanna's laugh was bitter as winter frost. "You didn't know your wife was a kinslayer. You didn't know she threw her own sister into the Vale Between to rot for 2 decades. You didn't know she's been stealing your blood for ritual magic since your wedding night. Forgive me, Your Majesty, if I question what you know." Each word hit like a physical blow. Alaric's hand tightened on his dagger, not in threat but in need for something solid, something real in a moment where reality itself seemed to be fracturing. "Explain. Now. Not here." Lyanna's eyes flickered to the windows, to the shadows beyond. "Your study has ears. The entire palace does. Seraphina made sure of that when she wove her surveillance spells into the foundation stones. Every word spoken in these halls feeds back to her. She no longer has authority." "Authority?" Lyanna's voice cracked with something between laughter and rage. "She never needed authority. She needed your blood, your trust, and your blindness. She got all 3. He shifted the child. His child, how could this be his child, to her hip with practiced ease? "There's a place we can talk. The old temple in the Forgotten Gardens. Even Seraphina's magic doesn't reach there. The moon goddess sees to that." Alaric should have refused, should have called his guards, had this woman, this impossible ghost, detained and questioned properly. Should have done 1,000 things that a king who'd ruled for 3 centuries would do when faced with an intruder bearing impossible claims. Instead, he found himself nodding. "Lead the way." The Forgotten Gardens existed in a pocket of the palace grounds that time seemed to have overlooked. Where the rest of the court gleamed with supernatural perfection, the gardens were wild, overgrown with roses that bloomed in colors that hurt to look at directly, their petals shimmering with residual magic from spells cast centuries ago. Ancient oak trees twisted toward a sky visible through gaps in the palace wards, their branches hung with silver bells that chimed without wind. At the heart of the gardens stood a temple older than the lunar court itself. White marble columns, cracked with age, supported a domed roof open to the stars. Inside, a pool of water reflected moonlight that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. This was a place of the moon goddess, built by the first wolves who'd learned to walk upright, who'd bargained with ancient powers for the gift of transformation. It was also the one place in the entire court where Alaric felt truly at peace. Lyanna set the child down gently on the temple steps. The little one, boy or girl, Alaric couldn't tell, immediately toddled toward the pool, fascinated by the dancing light. Lyanna watched with the vigilance of someone who'd learned that danger could come from anywhere, at any time. "Her name is Elena," she said softly. "After your mother." The world tilted. Alaric's mother had died 300 years ago, her name lost to all but the oldest records, deliberately obscured because she'd been a rogue, a wolf without pack, and the court had never forgiven him for carrying her common blood. Only a handful of people in the entire realm would know that name. "How?" "Because I was there." Lyanna turned to face him fully, and in the moonlight, he could see the scars. Thin silver lines traced her arms, her neck disappearing beneath her collar. Scars from silver weapons, the kind that never fully healed on supernatural flesh. "I was there the night Seraphina performed the ritual of stolen seed. I was there when she used your blood and a fertility spell older than civilization to create life without your knowledge or consent. I was there when she realized the child would be too powerful, too pure of Thorne bloodline, and decided to eliminate the evidence." Alaric's hands clenched into fists. "You're telling me my wife, my ex-wife, used magic to conceive a child, then tried to kill it?" "Not tried, succeeded." Lyanna's voice was flat, emotionless. the tone of someone who'd learned to bury feeling to survive. Lyanna died. I watched her die. Seraphina used a blood curse, the kind that stops an infant's heart without leaving a mark. She would have burned the body, scattered the ashes, and no one would ever have known. But I'd spent 23 years in the veil between learning magic that even the Shadow Coven fears. I'd learned to bargain with things that live in the spaces between worlds. I'd learned that death isn't always the end, not if you're willing to pay the price. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing a scar that ran from wrist to elbow, still faintly glowing with residual magic. I gave half my life force to bring her back. The veil took 23 years from me, but I gave 20 more willingly. I have perhaps a decade left if I'm lucky. The casual way she spoke of her own death made something twist in Alaric's chest. Why? Why would you sacrifice yourself for a child that isn't yours? Lyanna's smile was sad and ancient. Because she's innocent. Because Seraphina has taken enough. Because someone needed to stand between that monster and a helpless infant. She paused. And because I made a promise to your mother a long time ago. In a dream, the moon goddess sent me in the veil. She asked me to protect her bloodline. So I am. Alaric moved to the pool's edge, watching Lyanna play with the reflected light. The child laughed, a sound of pure joy, and his wolf whined with a longing so intense it was physical pain. What does Seraphina want? If she tried to kill Lyanna once, she wants what she's always wanted. Power. Lyanna joined him at the pool. The Thorne bloodline is the purest in existence. Your family has ruled for 1,000 years, because your blood carries the moon goddess's direct blessing. Seraphina thought she could harness that power, use it to fuel her own ascension. She's been working toward becoming the first witch queen of the lunar court, powerful enough to challenge even the old gods. That's insane. That's ambition. Lyanna's voice hardened. And she's closer than you think. Tonight at the dissolution ceremony, she didn't just accept the divorce. She completed the final phase of her ritual. Every moment you stood beside her, every word of the formal separation, fed power into a spell she's been building for 50 years. She used your marriage as a magical anchor, and your divorce as the catalyst to break it. Alaric's mind raced back through the ceremony. The words they'd spoken, the ritual breaking of the bond, the formal severing of their magical connection. Standard procedure for high-ranking supernatural divorces. Except the blood oath, he breathed. At the end we both cut our palms, let our blood mix one final time to symbolize the peaceful end of our union. And in that moment, she took the last thing she needed, fresh Thorne blood given willingly in a sacred ceremony, mixed with her own under the moon goddess's witness. Lyanna's expression was grim. She's going to attempt the ascension ritual tomorrow night, during the new moon when the goddess's attention is elsewhere. If she succeeds, she'll become something beyond witch, beyond wolf, beyond anything the supernatural world has seen in millennia. She'll be unstoppable. And Lyanna is the one thing that can stop her. Lyanna knelt beside the child, brushing dark curls from her face with infinite gentleness. Eleanor is pure Thorne blood, untainted by Seraphina's manipulation. She's what Seraphina tried to create and failed, a perfect vessel for the moon goddess's power. If Lyanna is presented to the goddess before Seraphina completes her ritual, the goddess will recognize the true heir and reject Seraphina's claim. You want me to use my daughter as a weapon against her own mother. I want you to save your daughter's life and your kingdom. Lyanna stood, meeting his eyes with fierce intensity. Because if Seraphina succeeds, Lyanna dies. You die. Everyone who carries even a drop of Thorne blood dies. She'll consume you all to fuel her transformation. The temple fell silent, except for Lyanna's happy babbling and the distant chime of silver bells. Alaric looked at this woman, this stranger who'd sacrificed decades of her life, who'd endured torments he couldn't imagine, who'd walked out of a dimensional prison carrying his child, and saw truth in every scarred inch of her. What do you need from me? Lyanna's shoulders sagged with relief. Tomorrow night there's a council gathering. Seraphina will be there. She still has the right to attend as former queen. She'll use it as cover for the ritual, hiding in plain sight while her coven works in the shadows. We need to expose her before she can complete the spell. Exposure won't be enough. The council will demand proof. Then we give them proof. Lyanna pulled a small crystal vial from her pocket, filled with liquid that swirled with dark purple light. This is essence of veil shadow. I collected it during my imprisonment. If we can get Seraphina to ingest even a drop, it will reveal every spell she's cast, every lie she's told, every crime she's committed. The truth will be undeniable. Alaric took the vial, feeling the cold weight of it in his palm. And if this fails, then we run. I take Lyanna somewhere even the lunar court can't reach, and you prepare for war. Lyanna's voice was steady, but he heard the fear beneath it. Because Seraphina won't stop. She'll hunt Lyanna to the ends of the earth. No, the word came out with absolute finality. I've spent 3 centuries building a kingdom on law and order. I won't run from a threat, and I won't let my daughter grow up in hiding. He looked down at Lyanna, who'd abandoned the pool and was now tugging on his pant leg with chubby hands, those gold eyes looking up at him with complete trust. Something in his chest cracked open. We end this tomorrow, together. He bent down, and Lyanna reached for him with a delighted squeal. The moment his hands touched her, the moment he lifted her into his arms, power surged through him like lightning. The bond snapped into place, father and daughter, blood to blood, soul to soul. His wolf howled in recognition and joy. "Hello, little one," he whispered, and Lyanna patted his face with sticky hands, laughing. Lyanna watched them with an expression of such profound sadness and hope that Alaric felt it like a physical ache. "She's been waiting to meet you. I've told her stories about her father, the Alpha King who protects all wolves, who fights for justice, who never breaks his word. Then I won't start now." Alaric met her eyes over Lyanna's head. "I swear on my crown, on my blood, on the moon goddess herself, I will protect you both, whatever comes." The temple bells chimed, loud and clear, as if the goddess herself was bearing witness to his oath. Neither of them saw the shadow that detached itself from the garden wall, slipping away into the night to carry word to its mistress that the Alpha King had found his hidden daughter. The trap was set. Tomorrow night everything would burn. Dawn broke over the lunar court in shades of silver and gold, but Alaric hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in the Forgotten Gardens, watching Lyanna sleep curled against Lyanna's chest, both of them wrapped in a blanket that shimmered with protective runes. Every instinct screamed at him to take them into the palace, to surround them with guards and wards, to announce to the entire court that he had an heir. But Lyanna's warning echoed in his mind. "The palace has ears." "We need a safe house," he said, as the first light touched the temple columns. "Somewhere Seraphina's spies can't reach." Lyanna stirred, instantly alert in the way of someone who'd learned to sleep with one eye open. Eleanor remained peacefully asleep, her small hand fisted in her aunt's tunic. "There's nowhere in the lunar court that's truly safe from her. She's had 50 years to plant her roots deep. Then we go outside the court." Alaric stood, his mind already racing through possibilities. "The Shadowfen district. It's technically within my territory, but it's governed by the hybrid clans. Seraphina's always avoided it. She considers hybrids beneath her notice, which makes it perfect." Lyanna carefully shifted Eleanor, who mumbled in her sleep but didn't wake. "But the hybrids don't trust pure-blood wolves. They certainly won't trust the Alpha King. They'll trust Marcus." Alaric pulled out a small silver coin from his pocket, inscribed with his personal seal. He pressed his thumb to it, letting a drop of blood well up and sink into the metal. The coin glowed briefly, then dimmed. "My beta has connections in Shadowfen. He's been working for years to bridge the gap between purebloods and hybrids. If anyone can secure a sanctuary, it's him." Within the hour, Marcus arrived at the gardens alone, as instructed. His weathered face showed no surprise at finding his king with a strange woman and a child. 3 centuries of friendship had taught him when to ask questions and when to simply act. "The Thornwood safe house," Marcus said after Alaric explained in terse sentences. "It's owned by Kira Thornwood, a hybrid alpha. She owes me a life debt from the border wars. She'll shelter them, no questions asked. And she can be trusted." Marcus's expression was grim. "She hates Seraphina more than anyone I know. The Queen, the former Queen, had Kira's brother executed 20 years ago for conspiracy against the crown. It was a lie. He discovered something about Seraphina's dealings with the Shadow Coven and was bringing evidence to you. He never made it." Lyanna's sharp intake of breath drew both men's attention. "Demon Thornwood. I remember him. He was in the Vale Between for 3 months before they executed him. He told me about the evidence. Documents proving Seraphina was selling lunar court secrets to the Coven in exchange for forbidden magic." Her voice dropped. "He also told me about his sister, said she was the strongest person he knew, that she'd survive his death and come back stronger. She did." Marcus's voice carried respect. "She built Shadowfen from a slum into a thriving district. The hybrids there would die for her. If she gives her protection." Not even Seraphina would dare move against it openly. Then that's where we go. Alaric looked at Lyanna. You and Elena will stay with Kira. I'll remain in the palace, act as if nothing has changed. We can't let Seraphina know we're aware of her plans. And if she already knows, Lyanna's eyes were sharp, if she had watchers in the gardens last night, then we move faster than she can react. Alaric's voice carried the steel of command. Marcus, I want every loyal wolf in the palace on alert. Quietly. No one who's shown even a hint of allegiance to Seraphina can know, and I want information on everyone who attended her during the divorce ceremony. Someone helped her with that ritual. I want to know who. Marcus nodded and slipped away as silently as he'd come. Alaric turned back to Lyanna, who was gently waking Elena. The child's eyes opened, immediately seeking him out, and that strange pull in his chest tightened. She knows you, Lyanna said softly. Blood calls to blood. She's known since the moment you held her. How is that possible? She's barely 2 years old. She's barely 2 years old, and she's died and been resurrected by veil magic. She's not entirely normal. Lyanna's expression was troubled. The magic I used to bring her back changed her, made her more aware, more connected to the supernatural currents that flow through this world. She can sense things, emotions, intentions, power. It's why she trusts you instantly. She feels your truth. Alaric knelt before Elena, who reached for him with a delighted gurgle. Hello, little star, he murmured, and was rewarded with a giggle. You're going to go on an adventure today, with Aunt Lyanna, but I promise I'll see you again soon. Eleanor's small hand patted his cheek, and for a moment he could have sworn he felt something, a warmth, a reassurance, as if this tiny child was comforting him instead of the other way around. The journey to Shadowfen was made through the old tunnels beneath the palace, passages that dated back to the court's founding, known only to the royal family and their most trusted advisors. Alaric led them himself, unwilling to delegate his daughter's safety to anyone else. Shadowfen existed in the space between the lunar court's rigid hierarchy and the wild lands beyond. Here the architecture was a chaotic blend of styles, witch towers next to wolf dens, fairy gardens growing on rooftops, demon-forged metalwork decorating doorways. The residents were hybrids of every combination: wolf-witch, vampire-fae, demon-human, and countless others. They were the ones who didn't fit neatly into any category, and they'd built a community that celebrated that difference. Kira Thornwood's residence was a converted warehouse on the edge of the district, its exterior deliberately unremarkable, but the moment Alaric crossed the threshold, he felt the wards, layers upon layers of protective magic, woven by multiple traditions, creating a defense that would give even Seraphina pause. Kira herself was a striking woman in her early 40s, with the silver-streaked dark hair of wolf heritage and the violet eyes of witch blood. She moved with predatory grace, and when she looked at Alaric, there was no deference in her gaze, only assessment. Your Majesty. Her voice was cool. Marcus said you needed sanctuary for someone important. He didn't mention it was you bringing them personally. Because what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. Alaric stepped aside, revealing Lyanna and Elena. This is Lyanna Ashford, sister to my ex-wife, and this is Elena, my daughter. Kira's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of her shock. Then her gaze sharpened, taking in Elena's golden eyes, the way the child clung to Lyanna, the protective runes on the blanket. Seraphina doesn't know. Seraphina tried to kill her. Lyanna saved her. Alaric's voice was flat, emotionless, because if he let himself feel the rage that simmered beneath, he'd lose control. Tomorrow night, Seraphina plans to attempt an ascension ritual that will make her powerful enough to challenge gods. We're going to stop her, but I need Elena safe while we do it. And you came to me because you know I'd burn the world before I let that witch harm another child. Kira's expression was fierce. My brother died because of her. I won't let your daughter follow. There's more. Lyanna spoke for the first time since entering, her voice steady despite the exhaustion Alaric could see in the lines around her eyes. Seraphina has been using Thorne blood for ritual magic for 50 years. She's been draining the king slowly, carefully, taking just enough that he wouldn't notice. That blood has been used to fuel dark spells, to strengthen her connection to forbidden powers. If she completes the ascension, she'll try to consume every living person with Thorne blood to fuel her transformation. That includes Eleanor. That includes the king. That includes anyone in the entire realm who carries even a trace of the bloodline. Kira's face went pale. My grandmother was a Thorne. Distant relation, but the blood is there. Then you're a target too. Alaric met her eyes. I'm not just asking you to protect my daughter. I'm asking you to help me save everyone Seraphina plans to sacrifice. The hybrid alpha was silent for a long moment, her violet eyes distant. Then she nodded sharply. I'll do more than provide sanctuary. I'll mobilize the hybrid clans. We've been waiting for a reason to stand against the pure-blood elite who've looked down on us for centuries. This is it. She looked at Lyanna, who was watching her with solemn golden eyes. And I'll guard this little one with my life. Alaric felt something in his chest ease slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when Seraphina is dead and your daughter is safe. Kira gestured to a woman who'd appeared in the doorway. Another hybrid. This one with the delicate features of Fae and the solid build of dwarf heritage. Mira will show you to the secure rooms. They're warded against scrying, tracking, and physical assault. Not even the Shadow Coven could break through. As Lyanna moved to follow Mira, Lyanna still in her arms, Alaric caught her wrist gently. Stay alive, he said quietly. Lyanna needs you. And, he hesitated, then continued, I need to understand what happened to you, all of it. When this is over, I want the full story. Lyanna's expression was unreadable. When this is over, Your Majesty, you may not want to know me at all. The things I did to survive the veil, the bargains I made. I'm not the innocent girl Seraphina threw away. I'm something else now, something darker. So am I. Alaric released her wrist. I've ruled for 3 centuries. I've made choices that haunt me. I've sacrificed people I cared about for the greater good. We're all darker than we'd like to be. But you saved my daughter. That's all that matters right now. Something flickered in Lyanna's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. Then she nodded and followed Mira deeper into the safe house, taking Eleanor with her. Alaric watched them go, committing the image to memory. His daughter's dark curls, Lyanna's protective stance, the way they moved together like they'd been family forever. Then he turned to Kira. I need to know everything you know about Seraphina's activities in Shadowfen. Every contact, every transaction, every whisper. Kira's smile was sharp as a blade. Your Majesty, I've been collecting evidence against that witch for 20 years. I have names, dates, and documentation of every crime she's committed in my district. I was just waiting for someone with the power to act on it. She pulled out a thick folder from a hidden compartment in the wall. Consider this my brother's revenge. Delivered 20 years late. Alaric took the folder, feeling its weight. Inside would be the ammunition he needed, the proof that would turn the council against Seraphina, that would justify what he was about to do. One more thing, Kira said as he turned to leave. There's someone you should meet, someone who's been waiting for you. She led him to a small room at the back of the warehouse. Inside, sitting in a chair by the window, was a man Alaric didn't recognize, until he caught the scent. Wolf but old, ancient even, and beneath that something familiar that tugged at memories 3 centuries old. The man stood, and Alaric saw his eyes. Gold eyes, Thorne gold. Hello, nephew, the man said quietly. It's been a long time. The world tilted on its axis. Alaric had no uncles. His mother had been an only child. His father's line extinct except for him. The Thorne bloodline was singular, isolated, his alone. And yet, those eyes didn't lie. Who are you? The question came out as a growl, his wolf rising to the surface, recognizing kin and threat in equal measure. My name is Tobias Thorne, your father's younger brother. The man's voice was weathered, like stone worn smooth by centuries of water. He looked perhaps 60 in human years, but his eyes held the weight of much longer. I was exiled from the court 350 years ago, before you were born. Your father made sure every record of my existence was erased. As far as the official histories are concerned, I never existed. Alaric's mind raced. Why? Because I opposed his marriage to your mother. Tobias's expression was regretful. Not because she was a rogue, I didn't care about that, but because I saw what he couldn't, that their union would paint a target on any child they had. The pure-blood families would never accept a king with common blood. I tried to warn him. He called it treason and banished me to the outer territories. And you've been in Shadowfen for 3 centuries. Among other places, I've watched you rule, nephew. Watched you build something your father never could. A kingdom where bloodline matters less than character. You proved me wrong. The half-blood king became the greatest ruler the Lunar Court has ever known. Tobias stepped closer, and Alaric caught the scent of old magic clinging to him, the kind that came from decades of living on the edges of civilization. But now you face a threat that will test everything you've built. Seraphina isn't just ambitious. She's been planning this since before she met you. You know about the Ascension ritual. I know about all of it. Tobias gestured to the walls, where Alaric now noticed maps, documents, photographs, a conspiracy board spanning decades. I've been tracking Seraphina's movements since she first appeared at court 50 years ago. She's not who she claims to be. The Ashford family is old and powerful, yes, but Seraphina isn't pure Ashford. She's a hybrid, witch and something else. Something ancient that shouldn't exist in this world. Kira spoke from the doorway. Show him the photograph. Tobias pulled a yellowed photograph from the wall. It showed a woman who could have been Seraphina's twin, standing in front of a building with architecture that predated the lunar court by centuries. This was taken 400 years ago. That's Seraphina. She's been alive far longer than anyone knows, jumping from identity to identity, always working toward the same goal. Which is to become the vessel for an entity called the Void Mother, an ancient goddess who was banished from this realm millennia ago by the combined power of all supernatural races. Seraphina has been gathering power, positioning herself, waiting for the perfect moment to open the doorway and let the Void Mother return. Tobias's voice was grim. The Ascension ritual isn't about making Seraphina powerful. It's about making her empty enough to be possessed by something far worse. Alaric felt ice flood his veins. And Lyanna is the key to stopping it. Pure Thorne blood, blessed by the moon goddess, untainted by Seraphina's corruption. If Lyanna is presented to the moon goddess during the ritual, the goddess can use her as an anchor to seal the doorway permanently, but it will require Lyanna to channel more power than any 2-year-old should be able to handle. Tobias's expression was pained. It might kill her. No. The word came out flat, absolute. I won't sacrifice my daughter. Then we find another way. Lyanna's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, having left Lyanna with Mira. There's always another way. We just have to be smart enough to find it. The veil taught you well, Tobias said, studying her with interest. You survived 23 years in that hell and came out sane. That's remarkable. I came out functional. Sanity is debatable. Lyanna moved into the room, her eyes scanning the conspiracy board with the intensity of someone who'd learned to see patterns in chaos. But I learned things in the veil, things about the nature of reality, about the spaces between worlds. The Void Mother can only enter through a willing vessel, and the vessel must be completely emptied of their own soul first. That's what the Ascension ritual does. It burns away Seraphina's humanity, leaving only a shell. So we stop the ritual before it completes, Alaric said. We can't, she's already started it. The divorce ceremony was the first phase. By now, she's probably completed the second and third phases. There are 7 phases total, and the final one happens tomorrow night during the new moon. Lyanna pointed to a diagram on the wall showing a complex magical circle. But here's what she doesn't know. I brought something back from the veil, a piece of the void itself. It's anathema to the Void Mother, like matter and antimatter. If we can introduce it into the ritual at the right moment, it will collapse the entire spell and seal the doorway forever. And what happens to Seraphina? Kira asked. She burns. From the inside out. The void fragment will consume everything she's built, every spell she's woven, every dark bargain she's made. It won't be quick, and it won't be painless. Lyanna's voice was cold, but it will be permanent. Alaric studied her, seeing the woman who'd endured the veil, who'd sacrificed decades of her life, who'd walked through hell carrying his daughter. You want revenge. I want justice. There's a difference. Lyanna met his eyes. Revenge would be making her suffer for what she did to me. Justice is stopping her from doing it to anyone else. If she suffers in the process, well, that's just a bonus. Despite everything, Alaric felt a smile tug at his lips. Remind me never to cross you. Too late. You married my sister. That's crossing enough. But there was no heat in her words, and something that might have been humor flickered in her eyes. Tobias cleared his throat. If we're going to do this, we need to be strategic. Tomorrow night's council gathering is at the Grand Hall. Seraphina will attend, as is her right as former queen. She'll use the gathering as cover, while her coven works in the shadows to complete the ritual. We need to be in 2 places at once, disrupting her coven and confronting her publicly. I'll handle the public confrontation, Alaric said. I'm calling a special session of the council. I'll present Kira's evidence, expose Seraphina's crimes, and force her to defend herself in front of the entire court. That will keep her occupied and visible. And while you do that, I'll take a team to her ritual site and introduce the void fragment. Lyanna's expression was determined. But I'll need help. The site will be heavily warded and guarded by her coven. You'll have it, Kira stepped forward. I can mobilize 50 hybrid warriors within the hour. We've been training for years, waiting for a chance to prove ourselves to the court. This is it. I'll go with them, Tobias added. I know Seraphina's magical signature. I can help break through her wards. Alaric looked at each of them. His uncle who'd been erased from history, the hybrid alpha who'd turned tragedy into strength, the woman who'd survived the impossible. Tomorrow night, we end this. But tonight, we prepare. Kira, I need your warriors ready but hidden. Tobias, I need everything you know about Seraphina's magic written down. Lyanna, he paused, I need you to rest. You've been running on fumes since you escaped the veil. You're no good to anyone if you collapse. I'll rest when Elena is safe and Seraphina is dead. But even as she said it, Alaric could see the exhaustion in the set of her shoulders, the shadows under her eyes. That's not a request. It's an order. His voice carried the weight of command, but also concern. Elena needs you alive and functional, so do I. Something shifted in Lyanna's expression, surprise perhaps that someone was looking out for her welfare. Fine, but I want to see Elena first. They found the child in a room that had been converted into a makeshift nursery, playing with wooden blocks while Mira watched over her. Elena's face lit up when she saw Lyanna, and she toddled over with a delighted squeal. Mama! The word was clear, unmistakable. Alaric felt his heart clench. Elena thought Lyanna was her mother. Of course she did. Lyanna was the only parent she'd ever known, the one who'd saved her, protected her, sacrificed for her. Lyanna scooped Elena up, holding her close. Hello, little star. Did you have fun with Mira? Elena babbled something incomprehensible, then noticed Alaric standing in the doorway. Her expression grew serious, and she reached for him with one hand, while keeping the other firmly wrapped around Lyanna's neck. She wants both of us, Lyanna said softly. She's smart enough to know she needs both her parents. I'm not her parent. You are. Alaric moved closer, letting Elena grab his finger with her small hand. I'm just the man whose blood she carries. You're her father. Blood isn't what makes you a parent. Choice is. And you chose her the moment you held her in the temple. Lyanna's eyes were intense. Don't diminish that. They stood there, the three of them connected by Elena's small hands, and Alaric felt something shift in his chest. This was his family, broken, strange, forged in crisis, but his. After tomorrow, he said quietly, after Seraphina is dealt with, I want Elena to know me, really know me. I want to be her father, not just in blood but in truth. And what about me? Lyanna's voice was carefully neutral. Where do I fit in this picture? Wherever you want to be. Alaric met her eyes over Elena's head. You're her mother in every way that matters. You're also the woman who survived hell and came back stronger. You're remarkable, Lyanna Ashford. And I'd be honored if you'd stay. Both of you. Color rose in Lyanna's cheeks, the first real emotion he'd seen break through her careful control. You don't know me. Not really. The things I did in the veil don't matter. Not to me. Not to Elena. He reached out, gently touching her scarred arm. We all have scars, we all have darkness. What matters is what we do with it. Elena chose that moment to yawn hugely, her small body going limp with sudden exhaustion. Lyanna smiled, the expression transforming her face from merely beautiful to radiant. Someone needs a nap. She looked at Alaric. Will you stay? Just until she falls asleep. I'll stay as long as you need me. They settled into the room together. Lyanna in a chair with Elena in her lap, Alaric sitting on the floor beside them. Elena's eyes drifted closed, her breathing evening out into the deep rhythm of sleep. But her hands remained locked around both their fingers, as if even in sleep she was determined to keep them together. Tomorrow changes everything, Lyanna whispered. Tomorrow we take back our lives, Alaric corrected. All of us. Outside the safe house, night was falling over Shadowfen, and in the heart of the lunar court, in a tower that reeked of dark magic and older sins, Seraphina stood before a mirror that showed not her reflection, but a doorway into endless darkness. Soon, she whispered to the thing that waited on the other side. Soon, Mother. I've waited 400 years. One more night, and this world will be yours. The darkness pulsed with hunger, and Seraphina smiled. The grand hall of the lunar court was a monument to supernatural power. Vaulted ceilings soared 100 feet overhead, held aloft by columns carved from single pieces of moonstone that glowed with inner light. The floor was polished obsidian, inlaid with silver that formed the sigil of every pack, coven, and clan that had sworn allegiance to the Thorne crown over 1,000 years. Tonight, that floor reflected the faces of 200 council members, all gathered for what they believed was a routine session. They had no idea they were about to witness the fall of a queen. Alaric stood at the head of the chamber, wearing the formal regalia of his office, black leather and silver chains, the crown of office resting heavy on his brow. He looked every inch the Alpha King who'd ruled for 3 centuries. But inside, his wolf paced restlessly, wanting to be anywhere but here, wanting to be in Shadowfen, protecting his daughter. But this was his role. Keep Seraphina occupied, keep her visible, give Lyanna and the others time to destroy the ritual. The council recognizes His Majesty, Alpha King Alaric Thorne. The speaker's voice echoed through the hall. The floor is yours, Your Majesty. Alaric let his gaze sweep across the assembled faces. He saw allies and enemies, friends and sycophants, those who'd stood with him for centuries and those who'd sell him out for the right price. And there, in the section reserved for former royalty, sat Seraphina. She was breathtaking, as always. Midnight hair cascaded over shoulders draped in violet silk, her witch mark, a crescent moon, glowing faintly on her collarbone. She met his eyes with a small smile, confident and serene, a woman who believed she'd already won. She had no idea what was coming. "Honored Council," Alaric began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "I stand before you tonight to address a matter of treason, conspiracy, and crimes against the crown that span 50 years. The hall erupted in murmurs. Seraphina's smile didn't waver, but he saw her fingers tighten on the arm of her chair. 3 days ago, during the formal dissolution of my marriage, certain documents came to light. Documents that detail a conspiracy so vast, so carefully orchestrated, that it has taken me 3 centuries of rule to finally see it." He gestured, and Marcus stepped forward, carrying Kira's folder. "I present to the council evidence of the following crimes, committed by former Queen Seraphina Ashford Thorne." Marcus began reading, his voice steady and damning. "Conspiracy with the Shadow Coven to sell Lunar Court secrets. Murder of Demon Thornwood, who discovered said conspiracy. Illegal imprisonment of Lyanna Ashford in the Vale Between. Theft of royal blood for ritual magic. Attempted murder of a Thorne heir. And conspiracy to commit genocide against all who carry Thorne blood." The hall exploded. Voices rose in shock, outrage, disbelief. Council members were on their feet, some shouting questions, others demanding proof. Through it all, Seraphina sat perfectly still, her expression one of wounded innocence. "These are lies." Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. She rose gracefully, every eye turning to her. "Fabrications designed to destroy my reputation, now that I no longer have the protection of marriage to His Majesty. I have served this court faithfully for 50 years. I have advised, supported, and stood beside the crown through war and peace. And this is how I'm repaid, with accusations based on forged documents. The documents are not forged." Kira Thornwood stepped into the hall, 50 hybrid warriors at her back. The pureblood council members recoiled. Hybrids were rarely allowed in the Grand Hall and never armed. "I've spent 20 years collecting evidence against you, Seraphina. Every transaction, every murder, every dark spell. I have witnesses. I have testimony. I have proof that you killed my brother because he discovered you were selling our secrets to our enemies." Seraphina's mask cracked, just for a moment. Alaric saw rage flash in her eyes before she smoothed it away. The word of a hybrid against a pureblood witch? The council will hear all evidence before making judgment. Alaric's voice carried absolute authority. "That is the law. Or do you claim to be above it?" "I claim the right to defend myself against these baseless accusations." Seraphina's voice was cold now, the pretense of hurt falling away. "And I claim the right to face my accusers. Where is this sister I supposedly imprisoned? Where is this heir I supposedly tried to murder? Convenient that they're not here to testify. They're not here because you'd kill them the moment they appeared." Tobias Thorne stepped from the shadows at the edge of the hall, and the council gasped. The resemblance to Alaric was unmistakable. The same gold eyes, the same sharp features, the same aura of ancient power. "But I'm here, Tobias Thorne, brother to the late King Aldrich, uncle to the current king. Erased from history but not from life, and I can testify to crimes that predate your marriage by centuries." Seraphina's composure shattered. "You're dead. You died 300 years ago." You wished I had. You tried to have me killed twice. Once when I discovered you weren't who you claimed to be, and again when I started tracking your movements across the centuries. Tobias moved to stand beside Alaric. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize you? I saw you in Constantinople in 1453. I saw you in Salem in 1692. I saw you in New Orleans in 1862. Always a different name, always the same face, always working toward the same goal, to open a doorway for the Void Mother. The temperature in the hall dropped 10 degrees. Council members who knew the old stories, who remembered the legends, went pale. The Void Mother is a myth, Seraphina said, but her voice had lost its certainty. Is she? Alaric pulled out the vial of veil shadow that Lyanna had given him. The purple liquid swirled with dark light, and every supernatural in the hall felt its wrongness. This is essence of the veil between. It has a unique property. When ingested by someone who's cast dark magic, it reveals the truth of every spell they've woven. Every lie becomes visible. Every crime is exposed. Seraphina took a step back. You wouldn't dare. Forcing someone to ingest a magical substance without consent is illegal under court law. So is treason. So is murder. So is attempting to genocide an entire bloodline. Alaric's voice was ice. You have two choices, Seraphina. Drink this willingly and prove your innocence, or refuse and confirm your guilt. The hall fell silent. Every eye was on Seraphina, watching her calculate, watching her search for a way out. Alaric could see the moment she realized there wasn't one. She was trapped, exposed, her carefully constructed lies crumbling around her, and then she laughed. It was a sound of pure madness, echoing off the moonstone columns, raising the hairs on the back of every neck. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? Her form began to shimmer, reality bending around her. I've been playing this game for 400 years. I've toppled kingdoms, corrupted bloodlines, and fed entire civilizations to the darkness. Did you really think I didn't have a contingency plan? Power exploded from her in a wave that sent council members flying. The protective wards on the hall shattered like glass. And Seraphina's true form began to emerge. Something ancient and terrible, witch and demon, and something older, something that predated the separation of the supernatural races. The ritual is already complete, she hissed, her voice layered with harmonics that hurt to hear. I finished the 7th phase an hour ago. The doorway is open. The Void Mother is coming, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Alaric felt his blood run cold. If the ritual was complete, if the doorway was already open, then Lyanna and the others were walking into a trap. Marcus, get to Shadowfen, now, warn them. But before Marcus could move, the obsidian floor cracked. Darkness poured through the fissures, not shadow but true void, the absence of everything. It spread like infection, consuming light, sound, warmth. Council members screamed, trying to flee, but the doors had sealed themselves. You wanted proof of my crimes. Seraphina's laughter was triumphant. Here's your proof. Watch as I consume everything you've built. Watch as the Void Mother takes this world and makes it hers. Watch as your precious daughter becomes the first sacrifice to fuel her ascension. Eleanor. Her name was a roar from Alaric's throat. His wolf surged forward, transformation rippling through him. He'd tear Seraphina apart with his bare hands if he had to. But Seraphina was already dissolving, her form becoming smoke and shadow. Too late, Alpha King, too late for everything. The Void Mother hungers, and she will feast. She vanished, leaving only darkness spreading across the floor. Alaric didn't hesitate. He ran. In Shadowfen, Lyanna felt the moment the ritual completed. It was like a hook in her chest, yanking her towards something vast and hungry. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall of the safe house. It's done, she gasped. She finished it. The doorway is open. Kira's warriors, assembled and ready to raid Seraphina's ritual site, looked to their alpha for orders. Kira's face was grim. Then we changed tactics. We don't stop the ritual, we close the doorway. How? Tobias demanded. He'd stayed behind to protect Elena while the others fought, but now he looked torn between duty and action. With this, Lyanna pulled out the void fragment, the piece of darkness she'd carried from the veil. It pulsed in her hand, hungry and cold. I can use it to seal the doorway, but I have to do it from the other side. That's suicide, Kira said flatly. That's the price. Lyanna looked toward the room where Elena slept, guarded by Mira and a dozen warriors. Tell her I loved her. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't stay. No. The word came from the doorway. Eleanor stood there, having somehow escaped her guards, her gold eyes glowing with power that no 2-year-old should possess. "No, go stay." Lyanna's heart broke. "Baby, I have to—" "No." Eleanor toddled forward, and with each step the air around her shimmered. "Daddy coming. We wait. We fight together." And as if summoned by her words, Alaric burst through the door, his wolf form magnificent and terrible, his eyes blazing with protective fury. He shifted back to human, naked and uncaring, his attention solely on Eleanor. "Is she safe?" "For now." Lyanna met his eyes. "But Seraphina completed the ritual." "The Void Mother is coming. I can stop it, but you'll die." Alaric's voice was flat. "No, we find another way." "There is no other way. There's always another way." He looked at Eleanor, at Tobias, at Kira, and her warriors. "We're going to do what Seraphina never expected. We're going to work together. Pure-blood hybrid witch-wolf. We're going to show her that unity is stronger than any dark magic." Elena reached for both Alaric and Lyanna, her small hands glowing with golden light. "Together," she said clearly. "Family together." And in that moment Alaric understood. Elena wasn't just his daughter. She was the future, the bridge between all the divided factions, the proof that love and unity could overcome any darkness. "Together," he agreed, taking her hand. He looked at Lyanna. "All of us. We end this together, and we all come home." Lyanna's eyes shimmered with tears, but she nodded. Together. The darkness was coming, but they would face it as a family. 6 months later, the Forgotten Gardens had been transformed. Where once wild roses grew in chaotic beauty, now carefully tended paths wound between flower beds that bloomed in impossible colors, the work of hybrid gardeners who'd learned to blend witch magic with wolf instinct. The ancient temple at the heart of the gardens had been restored, its marble columns gleaming white in the afternoon sun, the pool at its center reflecting a sky so blue it hurt to look at directly. And in that temple, surrounded by flowers and family, Lyanna Ashford stood in a dress of silver silk and watched her daughter play. Elena had grown in 6 months, not just physically, though she was tall for a 2.5-year-old, but in power. The night they'd faced the Void Mother, Elena had done something no one expected. She'd channeled the combined power of everyone present, wolf, witch, hybrid, even the fragment of void that Lyanna carried, and woven it into a barrier so pure, so absolute, that the Void Mother's essence had shattered against it like waves against stone. Seraphina had burned. Just as Lyanna predicted, the void fragment had consumed her from within, unraveling 400 years of dark magic in minutes. Her screams had echoed through the lunar court for hours before finally mercifully falling silent. The doorway had sealed, the Void Mother had retreated, and Elena had collapsed into Alaric's arms, exhausted but alive. They'd all survived. Battered, scarred, changed, but alive. "You're thinking too much again." Kira's voice pulled Lyanna from her memories. The hybrid alpha stood beside her, wearing formal attire that somehow made her look even more dangerous. "This is supposed to be a celebration." "I know, Lyanna watched Elena chase butterflies with other children, hybrid, pure-blood, witch-born, all playing together without the divisions that had defined the court for centuries. "Sometimes I can't believe this is real, that we're actually here, that she's safe. She's more than safe, she's thriving." Kira's expression softened. "They all are. You did that. You and Alaric. You showed them a different way." The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of change. With Seraphina's crimes exposed and her conspiracy unraveled, the council had been forced to confront centuries of prejudice and corruption. Alaric had seized the moment, pushing through reforms that elevated hybrids to equal status with purebloods, that opened council seats to representatives from every supernatural faction, that made the lunar court truly representative of all its people. It hadn't been easy. There'd been resistance, protests, even an attempted coup by pure-blood extremists. But Alaric had faced each challenge with the same unwavering determination he'd shown that night in Shadowfen, and slowly, painfully, the court had begun to change. Kira had been appointed to the council, the first hybrid to hold such a position. Tobias had been officially restored to the Thorne family, his exile revoked, and his name returned to the histories. And Lyanna, Lady Lyanna. The title still felt strange. Alaric had insisted on restoring her to the Ashford family officially, giving her rank and title and a place in the court. But more than that, he'd given her a choice. "You don't have to be anything you don't want to be," he'd said. Not a lady, not a courtier, not anything. Just be Elena's mother, that's enough. But Lyanna had discovered she wanted more. She'd spent 23 years in the Vale learning magic that most witches only dreamed of. She'd survived horrors that would have broken anyone else. And she'd realized that knowledge, that strength, could be used for something other than mere survival. She'd opened a school, a place where young supernaturals, especially hybrids and those from disadvantaged backgrounds, could learn to control their powers, to understand their heritage, to become more than what society expected of them. It had started with 5 students in a converted warehouse in Shadowfen. Now 6 months later, she had 50 students and a waiting list twice that long. "Mama!" Elena's voice rang out, pure joy. She came running, her dark curls bouncing, her gold eyes bright. "Mama, look! I made the flowers dance!" Indeed, the roses around the temple were swaying in a pattern that had nothing to do with wind. Elena's power had only grown stronger, but under Lyanna's careful guidance, she was learning control, learning to use her gifts with precision rather than raw force. "That's beautiful, little star." Lyanna knelt, pulling Elena into a hug. "But remember what we talked about. We ask the flowers first if they want to dance." Elena's expression grew serious. "Oh, right." She turned to the roses, her small face solemn. "Sorry, flowers. Do you want to dance?" The roses seemed to lean toward her, and Elena giggled. They said yes, then dance away. Lyanna kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the scent of sunshine and magic and pure innocence. This was what she'd fought for. This moment, this joy, this future. "She's remarkable." Alaric's voice came from behind her, warm and familiar. Lyanna's heart did that stupid flutter it had been doing for months now whenever he was near. Like her mother. Lyanna stood, turning to face him. 6 months had changed Alaric too. He smiled more now, laughed more. The weight of 3 centuries of lonely rule had lifted, replaced by something lighter. Hope, perhaps. Or happiness. He wore simple clothes today. No crown, no ceremonial chains. Just dark pants and a white shirt that made his gold eyes seem even brighter. This was Alaric the father, not Alaric the king, and Lyanna had learned to love both versions of him. Love. The word still terrified her. "You're early," she said, aiming for casual and probably missing. "The ceremony doesn't start for another hour. I wanted to talk to you first. Alone." He glanced at Kira, who took the hint with a knowing smile. "I'll watch Elena, you two talk." She scooped up the protesting child, distracting her with promises of cake. Alaric waited until they were alone, then took Lyanna's hand. His touch was warm, solid, real. "6 months ago, you walked into my study carrying a child and a truth that shattered my world. You were a stranger, a ghost, someone who shouldn't have existed. And now, Lyanna's voice came out breathless. "Now, I can't imagine my life without you in it." His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "You've become my advisor, my friend, Elena's mother, and the person I trust most in this world. You've helped me rebuild the court into something better than it was. You've shown me that strength isn't just about power. It's about resilience, about surviving the impossible and choosing to keep fighting." "Alaric, let me finish." His eyes held hers, intense and vulnerable. "I know you've been through hell. I know you have scars, visible and invisible, that may never fully heal. I know you might not be ready for this, might never be ready, but I have to tell you the truth, because I've learned that secrets and silence only breed darkness." He took a breath, and Lyanna's heart hammered in her chest. "I'm in love with you, Lyanna Ashford. I think I have been since the moment you stood in my study and demanded I listen, since you sacrificed everything for a child who wasn't yours, since you looked at me and saw not a king, but a father who needed to step up. I love your strength, your intelligence, your fierce protectiveness. I love the way you are with Elena, the way you've built something beautiful from the ashes of trauma. I love you, and I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm just asking you to know the truth." Lyanna's eyes burned with tears. For 6 months she'd been so careful, so controlled, keeping her feelings locked away because she was terrified of being vulnerable again. Seraphina had taught her that love was a weapon, that caring made you weak. But looking at Alaric now, seeing the truth in his eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, she realized something. Seraphina had been wrong about everything. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared of letting someone in, of trusting, of believing this is real and not some dream I'll wake up from back in the Vale." "I know. I'm scared too." Alaric's smile was gentle. "I'm 347 years old, and I'm terrified of this, but I'd rather be scared with you than safe and alone. I don't know if I can be what you need. I'm broken, Alaric. The veil took pieces of me I'll never get back. You're not broken. You're scarred. There's a difference." He raised her hand to his lips, kissing the scar that ran from wrist to elbow. "And I'm not asking you to be anything other than who you are. Scars and all." Lyanna felt something crack open in her chest, the last wall she'd built around her heart, crumbling under the weight of his acceptance. "I love you too," she breathed. "I've been trying not to, trying to protect myself, but I can't help it. You're kind and strong, and you make me believe in futures I thought I'd lost the right to dream about." Alaric's smile could have lit the entire court. "Then dream with me. Build a future with me, not as king and subject, not as obligation or duty, but as partners, as equals, as family." "As family," Lyanna echoed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and sure, tasting of hope and promise and new beginnings. They broke apart at the sound of delighted squealing. Eleanor had escaped Kira's supervision and was running toward them, her face alight with joy. "Daddy kissed Mama! Daddy kissed Mama!" Alaric laughed, scooping Eleanor up and pulling Lyanna close with his other arm. "I did. Is that okay with you, little star?" Eleanor nodded vigorously. "We're family now, real family." "We've always been family," Lyanna said softly, "from the moment we chose each other." The ceremony that followed was unlike anything the Lunar Court had ever seen. Not a wedding. Neither Alaric nor Lyanna was ready for that yet, but a formal recognition of their family unit, a declaration before the court and the moon goddess that they were bound by choice and love rather than law or obligation. Representatives from every faction attended. Pure-blood wolves stood beside hybrids. Witches shared space with demons. Even a delegation of fae had come from beyond the court's borders, curious about the Alpha King who'd chosen love over tradition. Tobias officiated, his voice carrying across the temple. "We gather today to witness a truth that has always existed, but is now spoken aloud, that family is not defined by blood alone, but by the bonds we choose to forge. That love is not weakness, but the greatest strength, that from darkness and pain beauty can grow." Eleanor stood between Alaric and Lyanna, holding both their hands, her gold eyes glowing with power and happiness. When Tobias asked if they chose this bond freely, all three answered together, "We do." The moon goddess's blessing was immediate and unmistakable. Light poured down from the open roof of the temple, silver and gold intertwining, wrapping around the three of them like a cocoon. When it faded, a mark had appeared on each of their wrists, a crescent moon intertwined with a wolf, the symbol of their chosen family. The court erupted in cheers. Later, as the celebration continued into the evening, Lyanna found herself on the temple steps, watching the festivities with a sense of surreal contentment. Kira was teaching Elena a hybrid dance, both of them laughing. Tobias was deep in conversation with council members, probably plotting more reforms. Marcus was coordinating security with the easy competence of someone who'd done this for centuries. And Alaric was beside her, his hand finding hers naturally, their new marks glowing faintly in the twilight. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That 6 months ago, I was in the Vale, believing I'd die there, that I'd never see sunlight again, never hold Elena, never have a future." She leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his solidity. "And now I'm here. I have a daughter, a family, a purpose. I have you. It feels like a dream. Then let's never wake up." Alaric kissed her temple. "Let's build this dream into reality day by day, choice by choice. Together? Always together." As the stars came out over the lunar court, as music and laughter filled the forgotten gardens, Lyanna Ashford, survivor of the Vale, mother to a miracle, beloved of a king, finally allowed herself to believe in happy endings. Not because life was perfect, not because all their problems were solved, but because she'd learned the most important truth of all, that happiness wasn't a destination you reached, but a garden you tended, and she was finally ready to flourish where she was planted. In a dimension far from the lunar court, in a place where darkness reigned eternal, the Void Mother stirred. Her attempt to enter the mortal realm had failed, her vessel destroyed, her doorway sealed. But she was patient. She'd waited millennia before. She could wait millennia more. And next time, she would not underestimate the power of a family bound by love. Next time she would win. But that, as they say, is a story for another day. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the lunar court. If you enjoyed this tale of love, magic, and family forged in darkness, Please subscribe for more stories. Leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. We love hearing from our audience around the world. And share this story with someone who believes in the power of second chances and chosen family. Until next time, may you flourish wherever you're planted.